What you experienced as losing someone was never actually a loss. What felt like a person leaving your life or a situation dissolving, before you were ready to release it, was something operating at a level of intelligence so far above ordinary human understanding that your mind had no available framework for, interpreting it correctly in the moment it happened. The grief was real. The absence was real. The questions you asked in the silence that followed were completely real. But the conclusion you drew about what it meant was not the truth. You were not abandoned. You were redirected by something that loves you. In thousands of years of spiritual documentation, across every wisdom tradition that has ever attempted to explain why souls who belong together sometimes separate and why separations that feel catastrophic sometimes become the most important turning points in a person's entire life. One truth appears with absolute consistency. The universe does not remove what is genuinely yours. It only removes what was temporarily necessary for your development, but ultimately incompatible with your destination. What makes your situation extraordinary is the precision with which this removal occurred, not randomly, not cruelly, but with the exact timing required to redirect you before the misalignment became permanent damage. Before the separation happened, you made a quiet decision that most people in your position would not have made. You chose honesty over comfort inside that relationship or situation. You refused to become a smaller version of yourself in order to maintain a connection that was quietly asking you to shrink. You may not have named it that clearly at the time, but something in you recognized the cost of staying as you were and chose differently, chose your own integrity, your own direction, your own growth, even knowing it might disturb the equilibrium of something you deeply valued. That choice initiated the redirection. That connection you lost was never unwatched by forces operating beyond ordinary human perception. From the moment the incompatibility between where that person or situation was heading and where you were being called to go became spiritually visible, two kinds of attention locked onto the dynamic simultaneously. Darkness wanted you to stay, not because staying was good for you, but because the version of you that would have emerged from remaining inside that misalignment would have been easier to keep limited. And divinity began preparing the redirection with the care of something that understood exactly how much the separation would hurt, and chose it anyway because it was necessary. There was the moment you stopped explaining yourself to someone who had already decided not to understand you. There was the time you chose your own peace over the familiar chaos of a dynamic that was comfortable only because it was known. There was the season you recognized that your growth was making someone uncomfortable, and you chose to keep growing anyway rather than perform stagnation to preserve their ease. There was the night you released the outcome of a connection you had prayed for, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally trusted something larger than your own longing to know, better than you did. When the record of how you handled the loss was reviewed at the level where genuine spiritual assessments occur, what the ancient beings responsible for tracking human development recorded about you was not ordinary. They noted a soul that grieved without becoming vengeful, that released without becoming closed, that processed abandonment, or what felt like abandonment, without allowing it to permanently alter its capacity for trust and openness. That combination is extraordinarily rare. Most souls who experience separation at the depth you experienced it either close permanently or chase desperately. You did neither. You sat inside the pain and came through it still open. At the exact moment you genuinely released the connection, not performed release, not forced acceptance, but the real internal surrender that happens quietly and without audience. God witnessed it with complete and undivided presence. Archangels assigned to observe the spiritual development of souls navigating necessary separation were present for that moment in its entirety. What they saw was not weakness or defeat. What they saw was one of the most spiritually advanced acts a human being can perform, the willing release of something loved, in trust that what is being moved toward is worth what is being moved away from. That act was recorded permanently. From that witnessing came a decree issued with the full authority of the source, from which all genuine love and all genuine direction originates. The decree declared that the path which closed when that connection ended was not the path your life was designed to travel, and that the redirection it initiated was not a punishment for anything you did or failed to do, but a navigation correction applied with precision and with care. It further declared that what is being prepared for you along the redirected path carries a quality of alignment, genuine compatibility, and mutual elevation that the closed path was structurally incapable of producing. You are not a soul that loses people. You are an ancient soul that outgrows arrangements that were never capable of containing your full expression, and that outgrowing, painful as it always feels from the inside, is not failure, but faithfulness to something your spirit agreed to before this life began. You came into this human experience already carrying a destination, already oriented toward a level of connection and purpose that certain relationships and situations could only partially approximate. The separations you have survived were not the universe taking things from you. They were the universe refusing to let you settle for approximations of what you deserve. Your mission in this season is to become the living evidence that loss can be reframed without dishonoring the reality of what was felt. Every person in your circle who is currently chasing something that has already moved away from them, or grieving a connection that ended in ways they have not yet made peace with, needs to encounter a soul that has walked through genuine separation and arrived on the other side not hardened and not diminished but clearer, more aligned and more capable of genuine connection than before. You are not assigned to explain this to them. You are assigned to demonstrate it. As the redirected path becomes the path you are actually walking, the material dimensions of your life will begin reflecting the alignment that the separation made possible. Connections that match the person you have become through the loss, not the person you were before it, will begin arriving with a naturalness that requires no forcing and no performance. Opportunities that the previous path would have made you unavailable for will surface now that the unavailability has been removed. Resources that were waiting for you to reach the emotional and spiritual clarity that only the separation could produce will begin moving toward you with a momentum that feels unmistakably intentional. People around you who are still holding tightly to connections that have already spiritually ended will notice something in how you carry your redirection. They will see that you are not bitter, not desperate, not performing happiness over genuine grief, but genuinely moving, genuinely oriented forward, genuinely open to what the redirected path is producing. That quality of authentic forward movement in someone who had real reason to stay stuck will disturb something in them in the best possible way. It will make them question whether their own tight grip on what has already moved is protecting them, or simply delaying what the redirection is trying to give them. Across the world right now, thousands of souls are sitting inside the same confusion you sat inside when the separation first happened, asking the same questions, feeling the same absence, telling themselves the same painful stories about what the loss meant about their worth or their future. And simultaneously, thousands of souls who walked through that same confusion earlier are arriving at the same moment of clarity you are arriving at right now. The moment when redirection becomes visible as what it always was. When this many souls reach that clarity simultaneously, the collective shift in how human beings understand loss and love and timing becomes genuinely transformative. If something in these words has been resonating below the level of thought, if your body has been responding to this as recognition of something it already knew, but had not yet heard spoken clearly, then that response is your confirmation. And confirmation of this kind deserves to be honored rather than scrolled past. Comment 777 below so that the universe registers your awareness and so that others navigating the same redirection can find this message when they need it most. Share this with someone you know who is still inside the grief of a connection that ended and has not yet been shown where the redirection is actually taking them. Subscribe, because what comes next on your redirected path deserves continued support and clarity.